And welcome to this week's Mailbox. And this week we've got, of course, the personal looting guild runs coming up, why people want to play High Elf characters, raid testing, Azerite armor conspiracy, and there is going to be a question that's sort of related to a spoiler, but I'm going to put that right at the end of the video, and I'll warn you about it before I put it up as well. So you'll be safe enough in the meantime. First of all, though, it's mini competition. So I've been sort of changing the background for the thumb the last few weeks, mostly because I'm thinking, well, the thumb keeps looking the same. People can't easily distinguish between different ones if they're watching it, let's say, sometime later. So I thought I'd tie this in with the Azeroth review as well. So if 20 people in the comments below can tell me exactly where this mailbox is, not just the zone, but exactly the location of this mailbox, then on the Azeroth review on Tuesday, I will unfilter words relating to the diminutive G ones. So, can't say further than that. So if you want to be able to say gnomes on the Azeroth review, I need 20 people to be able to tell me where that mailbox is. Now, first question then. So, first statement. Sorry, first statement. Not sure if I trust your chat to explain Preacher's video to me. Yeah, so someone was explaining to me a video that Preacher had done on the I think it was the personal loot thing. Apparently someone had said something that wasn't quite the case. But the main comment here is, the point it was actually trying to make was that the personal loot change is to tackle the perception of unfairness from the part of the player base that don't venture into organised raiding because of that perceived unfairness. And there'll be several questions at the end of this video related to this as well, but specifically on this one. Obviously, perceptions are quite important in raiding. I've sort of known this as well. I mean, I'm talking quite recently about, you know, the perception on people who might actually quite like the idea of doing normal raiding, heroic raiding in a guild, who keep trying to just do it in pugs because they think that's the best way to do it. Or maybe people who don't do it at all because LFR, maybe they've tried it in a pug and it's horrendous and they think it'll just be worse in a guild. And I think that I am convinced that there's an awful lot of people where if they were to just join a guild of people of common interest, and you might not get it right first time, you know, side issue is, you know, as people may know, I've been playing a bit more Elder Scrolls Online lately. As soon as I can get into a cycle of thinking, right, I can put this time aside each week to play Elder Scrolls Online, which I would like to do, then I will be finding myself a guild as well, again, of common interest, a super casual guild. That's what I would like, because that is the best way to enjoy an MMO. It's not just because MMOs should be played that way either, because, you know, massively multiplayer, you know, multiplayer means you want to be in. It's not just like a principle. It is better in a guild than out of it. And so, yeah, but onto this perception of unfairness. I mean, what a lot of people are missing out on, and this is bound to be a theme I'm going to come to later, a lot of these runs where people think there's this perception of unfairness won't exist in Battle for Azeroth. I mean, in a way, what Blizzard are doing, removing this perception, is quite correct. They are going to remove that perception of unfairness because the scenario is never going to exist. The people who feel that things are stacked against them are not going to be able to join those runs anymore. But I'll come more onto that later. And to the second one. Oh, no, that's the third one. Go away. It says, even Thete, I have finals this week and have been studying for them a lot as well. Good, good. Wish my students had your attitude. I wish I made this one today. So this is the Azeroth review, the live discussion there. For a few points you made and how I see them slightly different. Well, there's no reason not to put them down here, of course. I do try and read as many comments as I can. In terms of comments that I'm able to read, because it was quite telling, because this week a certain video had the most comments I've ever had on a video, ever. And that, you know, and it did it in basically 24 hours, which was quite neat. The comments that it's most difficult for me to read are the ones that are replies to someone else, or even replies to me. For some reason, it's quite difficult to get notifications for those as well. So, but when someone just puts it shouldn't put people off commenting, because I do try and read them if I can. But, you know, the ones I tend to be able to read most of the time are just straight up comments. So if you're watching the Azeroth review not live, and you have something to say that is different, put it in the comments below. Because I'm likely to bring it up here. Obviously I can get through so many questions on the mailbox, but it is a lot more interesting to put up counter views because you can talk about them in more detail, rather than just saying, "Oh yeah, I agree," and there's an end to it. Oh dear, sorry, I've got windows open by the way because it's really hot. So if you hear any strange sounds, that's probably what it is. Either that or someone breaking into my house, but that hasn't happened for a few days. We already have Blood Elves, but who are High Elves that... we already have Blood Elves who are High Elves that change their names. What is the point of that discussion? So this was talking about people wanting High Elf playable characters. And I was saying that, like, in a way, in terms of what Blizzard said about it, they said a few things about it. One thing of which I sort of agree with, and that is that, what are High... There aren't really that many High Elves that would call themselves High Elves. There's not really that many. And... but the issue about... It says we already have Blood Elves, that High Elves that change their name. So what's the issue? The issue is, of course, that's Horde, not Alliance. And, of course, which faction you are... in terms of what you'd like to play, I know obviously a lot of people will choose the faction and the race just based on, min-max. They want to get into the fastest progress in a raid or something like that. There's some min-maxy reason for doing what they're doing. But for people who don't feel the need to have to do that, if people can choose which race or which faction they want to play, it's for storytelling purposes, role-playing purposes, whatever. The faction is actually more important than the race. So just saying, oh, those people should just go and play Horde. Might not like Horde. I don't like Horde. I just fundamentally don't enjoy being the Horde. I prefer being Alliance. I will play Horde if I had to, for raiding purposes. I did do once, and I may have to again. But ultimately, I much prefer playing Alliance. I will, sacrifice quite a lot of raid progress to be able to continue to play Alliance. I'm also fairly keen on being human, but that's only because my original Dungeons & Dragons Paladin character, upon which my Warcraft character is based, was human. But, if I had to change race for some reason, I'd be much less upset about that than having to change faction. So that's really the reason. Well, it's one reason anyway. There might be multiple reasons. And it is just that people want to be able to play that. Now, someone did actually come up with a really good idea on the Azeroth review for it as well, which is just to allow it to be a customization option for Void Elves. Because, just like we've got with Orcs and Trolls, they're going to get straight backs. That's like a customization option. Maybe you have that for Void Elves. And I know it's going to be a bit weird being called a Void Elf, but you just look like a High Elf. But for RP purposes, who really cares? And just have it like that. And maybe have their sort of voidy ability where they teleport away. Just look yellow instead of purple. Something like that, Just have it as a customization option. That would work. That would be okay. But in terms of the reasoning there, I think that's the reasoning there. It says next one. It says, have you ever done a video on the sites you regularly use as references? MMO Champion. You say MMO Champion, IO, Wowhead, etc. Well, if you remove the IO, you don't really need the etc. In terms of finding anything useful, you've got... in terms of sites, you've got MMO Champion, you've got Wowhead. Pretty much it. That's it. In terms of other sources, of course, you can go directly from Blizzard. They tweet things. Other people tweet things as well. So in ensuring you follow enough people on Twitter, and if you don't want to follow loads of people, follow the sort of people who will at least retweet important information that comes from others. So you don't have to follow every developer at WoW, but maybe follow a few people who do, and then they'll retweet anything of interest, hopefully. So that's really it. Wowhead, and MMO Champion, they both have their pros and cons. By and large, you'd probably use Wowhead more often for sort of, looking things up related to data mine stuff and items particularly. It's just a little bit more easy to navigate around that. But yeah, MMO Champion have got the useful blue tracker as well as Wowhead. So that's always good as well. Anyway, on to the next bit. So I seek to progress past heroic raiding. I feel the need to understand these other reference sources. Yes, of course, you want to try and learn as much as you can. Those two will... There isn't really a site that's going to give you any more information than those two. It doesn't necessarily give you context, though. So it is still useful, like listening to what people have to say about things as well as just the facts of the matter. And it says, second question, will I be raiding in Alpha Beta? Not likely. And I sort of tried to explain this. But the thing is with raid testing, in a if my guild doesn't do it, when a guild does it, it's quite valuable because you're trying things out. It's very coordinated. You're going to get to see lots of things. It's useful so that then when you get onto the fight, when it goes live, then you're familiar with a lot of things. But if you do it in a pug, it's not usually that. I mean, the best case scenario would be you being the pug and going with an actual organised guild, in which case, it might be okay. But if it's a straight up pug, where maybe there's a core from a guild, but the rest of it's just pug, it's not going to be as coordinated. It's not. You're just basically smashing your head against it. Occasionally, someone will come up with a statement. Because remember, on raid test, you're not trying to defeat the boss. From my point of view, what I'd be interested in is just experiencing some of the mechanics, seeing what time I've got to do certain things, bearing in mind that they could change a whole lot of things before it goes live anyway. But I just want to become familiar with the environment and the bosses. I'm not going to really do that in a pug. It's just a waste of time. Now, on a week off, for example, if it's going on, I might just join a pug just for the hell of it. But I'm not going to do it, and give up something else that I want to spend my time on instead. Because it's not fruitful. I don't think it's fruitful. That's not to say that pugs are not fruitful use. It's a good idea that they go on because Blizzard learn things from them. Blizzard gets stuff from there. But yeah, I've never. The best I've ever found when it's been completely split is if two raiding guilds join up and decide to do it together. That is less good, but that can still be productive. But I have experience going in where you've got loads of pugs and it's just you just sort of feel you're progressing with no hope of progress. You're not learning anything. I'm not experiencing anything. It's just complete chaos each time. I can get that when they release it on LFR. I'll get some benefit when they bring out the LFR version. I'll do the LFR versions because that's going to be uncontrolled chaos anyway. But I'll also still get used to the environment and some of the mechanics. I still remember doing the LFR Star Augur in Legion Beta. That was a good laugh. That was cracking. That was. Okay, on to Azerite armor. It says, so they don't want us to respec the gear, but want us to carry more pieces of gear so we can play different specs or guilds. So they want us to have to farm gear. Yes, I think yes. This is where I think the conspiracy thing. And I know I'd normally be sort of pouring water on conspiracies, but you know what? Some conspiracies are true. I think it's just the case that sometimes Blizzard come out with something for gameplay reasons, and they explain that they explain the gameplay reasons, and you can either agree or you can disagree. There are some things for which I have some sympathy for them, where they have to do it for non-gameplay reasons because at the end of the day they need the subscribers. WoW it's not completely a sub-based model these days because there is an online store. There are other ways for people to contribute to the company coffers without just paying for the subscription and the expansions. But it's not a very developed WoW store, so online store. So basically, they're getting their money from the subscription. So they want to keep people subscribed as long as possible. Now, people who play the game regularly for some reason, PvPers, raiders, or even people who are into doing the Mythic Plus dungeons, are likely to stay subscribed. That's all fine. There's an awful lot of people, though, and there's been a cycle for some years, where they subscribe when a new major patch comes out, maybe for a month, and then they unsubscribe. That's why they do things like time gating LFR. There is no reason really to time gate it, other than the fact they want the sort of people who will just access LFR to have to subscribe over a period of a couple of months at least. So that's why they bring out the first wing of LFR. Okay, it's fair enough bringing out the first wing of LFR after the normal and heroic. So that LFR is not your first experience of it for the people who want to at least do it properly. But then they give 2-week gaps between each wing, and they try and stretch it out over 4 wings if they can, or 3 in the very small rate. Obviously, that didn't work with Trial of Valor, but never mind. So, and that is all, that is all about keeping people subscribed for an extra month. Because there's, I don't know the numbers, but there's obviously a lot of people that do this, enough to make it worthwhile doing that. And there'll be other things as well. And I think the Azerite armor thing, because from a gameplay point of view, it just doesn't make sense. But it does from a point of view of getting people to farm more gear. Because it would be simplicity itself to have us be able to respec it along with our talents. They are talent. They're pseudo-talents. They are the BFA version of talents, just like the artifact traits were the Legion version of talents. The Azerite ones work a little differently because there's a bit more choice. Sort of follows on, I think... Oh no, I've lost the last question here. Never mind. There was a question, sorry, I've now forgotten to put it in, where someone was talking about, well, you know, they could have it so it's fixed for each spec. So you have this configuration for, let's say, your rogue assassination, this configuration for subtlety, and this other configuration for outlaw rogue. But again, that, you know, and that would sort of make sense. You go, yeah, that sounds reasonable. Unless, of course, again, it is that Blizzard wants us to farm the multiple pieces to extend the life of the content. And that's what I think they're doing it for. So that's why I don't think you can reconfigure it. They're allowing us to reconfigure it on a infrequent basis in case we make a mistake, or in case, you know, as they said in their own words, we get an upgrade that occupies the same slot, so now we use that previous one instead of throwing it away. We go, oh, well, actually, that will make a reasonable restoration thing, so I'll reconfigure it for my resto spec while I am enhancement shaman or something like that. Okay, so on to the big ones now. So, on the video, of course, most commented. An awful lot of those comments were from people who either hadn't watched the video or had made no pains to understand the video, or were just deliberately trolling, I don't know. But there was some interesting conversation that went on as well. But this one is a classic one of completely misunderstanding it, and deliberately so. I really don't think that it was unclear. So it says here, and this I think is a classic case of someone, and you can argue if you like, but this is a classic case of someone who wants the free loot, but of course can't really argue with the logic of it. It says, I don't have a problem with that both parties agree to terms. So what I was explaining here is, so you've got a guild group, say, and they're doing their normal heroic clear. Now, they invite some pugs along to fill up the spaces so they can get more loot, which isn't available to those pugs, it's for the raiders. And this is about two-way process. So the benefit to the guild, let's say they've got 25 raiders. But you can have 30 in the normal heroic run. So you bring along 5 pugs. It might be socials within the guild. It might be, you know, friends of people but in another guild or not in a guild. Or it might be bank holiday weekend. Or it might be complete strangers. I think people actually genuine pugs. And so, yeah, the benefit to that guild is they get an extra piece of loot because each person contributes an extra 20% chance of a piece of loot. So every 5 people, guaranteed extra piece of loot on that boss. So that's the benefit to the guild. So what's the benefit to the pug? The benefit to the pug is that they get a run through. They're going to get there, if it's on heroic, ahead of the curve. They're also going to get to coin those bosses. There is a chance of getting some loot that no one else wants as well. But, you know, ultimately that's it. And for some people, of course, they might say, well, that's not enough. Well, that's fine. You don't have to join. But for some people, they would go, actually, that'd be bloody brilliant. You know, I will get my achievements, so that make it easier to get into pugs the following week. And, you know what, I can coin a few bosses, might get something as well. Plus, I get to sort of learn the bosses because I'll be, you know, seeing how these guys are doing it as well. You know, I'll see what I need to be able to do in a stress-free environment. No one's asking a great deal of me because no one's going to be getting me to do important mechanics. You know, and that's the benefit to them. And from those points of view, it's either good enough or it's not. And what I'm saying is, in BFA now, the guild, because people are not looking at it from the guild's point of view, the guild now doesn't have that benefit to them. Then they can't funnel loot onto their raiders. So, you know, why would they now bring along the pugs? They won't. Now, for the people who are in that situation who are thinking, well, it's not fair, I don't think it's enough that I simply get the achievements and the quick run through and get to coin a few bosses. Well, they didn't have to join anyway. And those people, you know, that's a different thing. But what about those people who thought it was a good deal? They are now being deprived of it because they're not going to get that deal. There's no benefit in taking them anymore. None at all. So, you know, that's just not going to happen. But yeah, so that's what I was explaining. And it says here, so it says, I don't have a problem with that both parties agree to terms. Of course not. How can you argue against that? It says, I just don't like the attitude, especially in the video of, this scrub is only here because we, the god of guilds, allow him to think. He should think his lucky stars for being invited. I never said any of those words. And it's not even paraphrasing anything I did say. Right? Simple as that. And again, this is someone who fundamentally wants the free loot. It's very clear they fundamentally want the free loot. They can't argue with the logic of, well, mutual benefit, because otherwise you might as well just say, I'm entitled and I should have this. But at the same time, they just make shit up that happened in the video. Anyone who watched the video knows that that's not the case at all. But you have to think about it. What is the benefit for both parties? The guild's benefit has now disappeared, completely evaporated. On to the next comment. Don't worry, there is a comment of someone that's got a bit more sensible attitude. That still disagrees, don't worry. It says, yep, because how do you know if the player who is pugging has not worked hard on that raid? Because they're pugging. It's as simple as that. You know, why are they not in a guild raid? Ask yourself this. Again, people don't ever ask from the other point of view. Why is that person not in a guild raid? Because they think it's easier to pug. Or they think it takes less time to pug. There are some people who will say things like, you know, I don't have time to join a guild. But it takes longer to do it in a pug. Because you've then got to wait. You've got to, like, stay in queues to try and get into a pug. In a guild, you've got your set time. You just turn up at the set time and finish at the other time. And if you can't make it because your kid's ill, you've got to take them to the doctor or something like that, then that week you don't do it. It's fine. It's flex. And that's what I mean. Even the people who think they don't have time for a guild do. That's the perception that's wrong. There are guilds that will just raid for a couple of hours a week. And it might even be on different days as well. Just to, you know, it might be on a very flexible basis. It might be a very, you know, when's the day when most of us can make it this week? And if you can't make it that week, okay, well, that's, you know, too bad. Maybe next week. There's always a guild for people. There's a massive number these days. Blizzard deliberately did this difficult raid difficulty thing to cater for people in that situation. And it says, and if every guild master loot, like you said in the video, then the guy who pugs it will never get any loot at all. Am I wrong? Yes, you are wrong. You are wrong. But for the main benefit is not getting the loot anyway. But yes, you're wrong, because they have coins. And of course, you know, if they're doing it later on, because that's the thing, you know, early on in the tier, the benefit is you're getting those achievements. Later on, you might already have the achievements. But also later on, there's going to be more loot going begging that other people don't need. You know. But again, it comes down to this. You establish the looting rules beforehand. If you go to this guild group and say, okay, you'd like me to join you to fill up your raid, to funnel loot to your raiders. In the event that nobody needs any loot, can I have it? If the answer is yes, then that's fine. If they say, no, because actually we're going to give it to them, we're going to give it to our raiders even for transmog over you, then you can say, then there's no benefit for me. I'm sorry, I'm not going to join you. Again, mutual benefit. No one's been forced to do anything. So yes, you are very wrong. And it says, and how you can't see that might be a problem that Biz, I assume you mean Blizz, want to get rid of, but at the same time, if you're running a guild, I don't see the problem. You can still trade items. No, you can't. That's the whole point. You can't trade items if the item you get as personal loot is higher item level. And that is very, very likely of a pug. And run master loot in the same way, and if everyone has agreed to it. But this is the point. It's about agreement. In a guild, there's nothing to stop a guild group from like using personal loot if they want. In fact, I'll be honest, where we are at the moment, you know, that we're sort of farming bosses now, we're making a bit of a fist of it, but, you know, we've killed all the bosses in Antorus Mythic. I'd be absolutely happy if we just decided, you know what, just to make it easy, we'll just do personal loot. That would be fine for me. And then people can do their horse trading in private whispers and stuff like that, have smoother runs. It's not like there's another tier coming up or anything like that. So personal loot has its place because we're not gearing up for anything at the moment. But the agreement is the key part of it. Now, if some people are going to say that the 80% requirement for it to be a guild run and therefore be able to use master loot is too generous, and maybe it should be something like 90%, then you could argue on those lines. But the bottom line is that a guild should be able to choose its own system of loot distribution. Personal loot is not the same as master loot. You can't even run it the same as master loot. And it says, and don't pug out any places. So what you're now saying is the people who want to join those groups because they actually think it's better for them to be able to just coin a few bosses and get those achievements in a quick run that doesn't take up a load of their time, they shouldn't be allowed to do that. That's what you're saying. You're saying those people in that bracket who used to do that should not be allowed to do it. Because that's what this change is doing. You know, if a guild wants to offer out a few places for a ride through, or if they want to do it for gold, of course some guilds will do it selling runs, in which case of course you do get the loot. You know, you're saying they shouldn't be allowed to do that. Well, it's not up to you to tell people how to enjoy the game. It's not up to me to tell people how to enjoy the game. It says you do not need them right. You do not need them anyway, right? So I don't know what that means, sorry. That's why I said you sound entitled. How am I entitled when I'm not asking for anything I'm not working for, though? Because that was the point, by the way. This was a reply to my comment. He said, you're entitled. And I said, seriously? The one who's arguing that people should have to work for the loot sound entitled? What? Doesn't know what the word means. Would be a classic case for a dictionary corner, wouldn't it? You said that you said that you use people to get you more loot, to get the guild more loot, and that you don't think they deserve the loot. I never actually said that. What I said was, what have they... The whole video was, do you deserve loot? It was all about getting people to think, what does deserve actually mean? All right? And it says you use people to get more loot. I use people to occupy space, because that's the thing. You know, the raiders in the guild are doing the boss. Okay? The other people are there to occupy space. And as I said in a reply, whether they do that vertically or horizontally doesn't really matter. If they can do it vertically, that's a bonus. It's not essential. And then some people said, oh, well, you might get people coming in there, you rock the DPS and blah, 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 blah. Okay, why don't they join a guild then? Okay, but let's say, again, people think that doing really good damage or really good healing or something like that is helping. That's not helping. You're not helping the guild. Because the guild can kill the boss. If that guild group cannot kill the boss without you as a pug, it's not a raiding guild, okay? Different matter. I wasn't talking about just, you know, random... I was talking specifically about raiding guilds. You only get to call yourself a raiding guild if as a raid you kill bosses. If you can't kill bosses as a guild, then you're not a raiding guild. It's simple as that. So you've got these people, they're the ones putting in the work, they're the ones who've looked up how to do the bosses, they're the ones who've been farming the gear. If it's the first raid of the expansion, they've been farming gear, you know, for however many weeks they get, 2 weeks it's been for the last few expansions, to get themselves really raid ready. You know, they've been doing all that work. The pug comes along, they might have put in that same work, they may not. It's totally random. But the key thing is they are not helping. Because the help the guild wants is more loot. That's what they want. They don't need you to kill the boss. They can kill the boss without you. Face it. It doesn't matter whether you come top of DPS. They could still kill the boss without you. And that's what matters. What they want is the loot. Are you helping them to get more loot? If you want that loot yourself, you are not helping them to do that. And you should join... If you don't, if guild raiding isn't for you, then you should join a pug of complete players just like that. People should always play with other people that want the same thing. Mutual interest is the only way to play in a social game. And it's that simple. So on to another one, the third one of these, the third and final one. So this is someone who is at least not talking nonsense for selfish reasons. It says, I disagree and look forward to no more Master Loot. And no, I'm not a casual. I just killed Mythic Agrimar last night. Now, of course, anyone can say anything here, but I always take people at face value. Unless they say something in the comments that clearly contradicts what they're claiming to be, I will always assume they're telling the truth. And I'm a few weeks away from cutting edge. So you think. You might actually be, it has been nerfed. I have always hated Master Loot, Loot Councils, DKP, whatever stupid system guilds decide to use. Now, the thing is, you can say you dislike those systems, but to say they're stupid is to say that all the top guilds, including the very top, are stupid. Are you saying that the likes of Method, Exorcist, Limit, Midwinter, Scrubbusters are stupid? Really? Every guild, all the mythic guilds in the world, they're stupid? let's all just have an even playing field of RNG. But this is the point. I did another video explaining that it's not an even playing field. People think it's an even playing field because, again, people have fixed into their head that the way they get loot in BFA is from personal loot. No, that's not how. Well, that's if that's how you're getting most of your loot, then you might as well be in a pug, because that is not how most people in an organised guild playing as a team are going to get most of their loot. The way they're going to get most of their loot is from trading it when they can, which of course won't be early on. To begin with, first week or two, the only loot you're going to be getting, yes, is the loot that you get. But then, as more people start to get things that are not an item level upgrade of whatever they have, then the trading, preferably along sensible lines, is how you're going to get most of your loot. That's just how it's going to work. Because, I mean, you think about it this way, if there's, say, 8 people in the raid that off a boss can get an item that you need, then after a few weeks at least, you know, chance of you getting it is you're just one person. You have one person's chance. But if there's 8 people in the raid can get it, you're basically octupuling. Is that even the word I'm thinking of? I've never had to use that word before. Your chances. Increasing by 8-fold your chances. Need to add myself onto the dictionary corner. So there we go. It says no more split run. For most people, no. And buying must. So here we go. Someone's got, again, a chip on their shoulder. And buying master loot run BS. What's wrong with that? You know. It's not like they're fooling anyone that they got cutting edge just because they bought it. You can easily look at someone's profile and see whether they bought a cutting edge run or whether they did it themselves. It's not like you can fool a guild. Oh yeah, I got cutting edge last expansion, because they'll just see 1 kill of everything and go, So yes, I don't know what that last bit was. That's just obviously going through a process and then going, I don't like people. Maybe in their guild, you know, they sell runs and they don't like it. Although I suspect not if they're still doing progress. Or maybe they've been in a guild where they've done that before and didn't like that loot that they wanted went to a buyer after it was not deemed necessary by anyone else. But I do ultimately think anyone who's been in a Mythic Raiding guild who is against the master loot change, which is a very, very small number of people, are just ones who've had bad experiences, either because it wasn't distributed properly, and I've said this before, those people think that it's better to have like 20 odd people decide on loot than the 2 people who are just always getting it wrong, which I don't think is going to be the case. Or they just feel that they should be getting loot all the time, and the fact that they're not being given loot all the time, think, well, I'll just keep my own loot then. But you'll get a much smaller amount of loot. There you go. Now then. Is this right? Oh yes, so the next one is going to be the spoilery one, because I was asked to do a video on something spoiler related. So that's now. So if you've watched up to this point, thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share with other people if you're going to stop now. But I'm going to say that again in a minute, because there's one last question, and it's on the spoiler thing. So, Taylor and Anduin romance could be a good storyline. I didn't talk about this, actually. So I was talking about my speculation for Taylor. Much more linked with the Lich King and his potential shenanigans. But, yes, a few people said this, and it's sort of fairly obvious. I didn't really think about it. I think the reason I didn't think about it is because a lot of people are going from the point of view of, okay, Anduin doesn't have a romance going on, but there should be a Queen of Stormwind because there's going to need to be the next generation at some point, and blah, 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 blah. But the way I think that through is, if they were going to be, you know, running the Warcraft story as it is now, in a linear way, for, say, 20 years hence, then yes, they should probably be thinking of that. But I'm not sure that's the case. So, in many ways, they, you know, I just see it as they wouldn't have to. But when I think about it now, if people have said it, yes, they probably are thinking that, because that would be fairly obvious. There hasn't been anything in the BFA beta yet in terms of any. There's been no interaction between, and for Anduin, I haven't even seen him pop up at Culture, actually, I don't think. But I haven't seen any interaction between Anduin and Talia. But it could be a slow burner as the expansion goes on. He surely is bound to meet her. So, yes, I do think that's interesting. And, of course, as mentioned here, if they also still pursue the Lich King storyline, I think that's certain, given what she says in the quest box. Oh, I've gone blurry. When she first meets you. The fact that she even references her father makes me think... I mean, they could be just doing that just to say who she is. Because as you say there, or someone else said actually, you know, she'd be on that level. There'd be that link there because, you know, her father was Bolvar Fordragon. Bolvar Fordragon was the guy who was looking after Anduin when his father, well, was believed dead, but certainly was away. So there's a strong link between Anduin and Bolvar. And bear in mind, Anduin, presumably, also believes Bolvar to be dead. So there is definitely a link there. There's definitely a conversation starter when they meet. So, yes, I can definitely see this. And it would add a lot of spice to it if there was also a situation where, you know, the Lich King came into it more. And yes, in terms of if she needs to pick between him and her father, that could add some interest. In fact, it would be such an interesting character storyline that I don't believe they're actually going to do it. They may do it in novel form. I really don't believe they would ever pick up a character storyline of that complexity in the game itself. So that's probably the only thing shooting it down. But the romance idea now... Bloody hell. The romance idea now appeals to me more than the Lich King link thing. Now that I think about it. Which might be a bit more boring. But yeah. Yeah. So that's that one. But yes, we couldn't actually not do the dictionary corner, could we? So entitled. Maybe we should do these as words of the week. Entitled. Oxford English Dictionary. Although I don't believe, in this particular case, I don't think the American definition differs at all. Believing oneself to be inherently deserving of privileges or special treatment. Really don't see how someone arguing that you should have to work for anything at all. And actually someone, see, I in the video explained very, very clearly that I don't even see it as a reward. I don't give a monkeys about gear. It's there as a tool for progress. I happily give up that, you know, like I've said before, when loot goes out, if I bid on something, if I say, oh, this is why I want it, that's it. I forget about it. You know, until it drops in my bags. If it doesn't drop in my bags, not a second thought is paid to it. But a lot of those comments on those people... The irony is, just coming back to it, last final word on this, is that a lot of those people are going to be thinking, oh, Sunlit Fields, it's all going our way now. And I am talking about the ones who want it for free. I'm not talking about the ones who have another issue with personal loot. Remember, I'm not one of those ones who says, if you are not in favour of this... If you are in favour of this change, sorry, then you are entitled. I know there are some people that have perceptions genuinely held that are a reason for it, but there's a massive number of people who see it as a way for them to grab a load of gear that they didn't otherwise have access to. The problem is that they're still not going to have access to it because those runs are not going to exist. The only pug runs that are going to exist in BFA are actual pug runs, and I would strongly suggest to everyone that you join a guild, because I can see the pug scene becoming horrendous, absolutely horrendous in BFA. I mean, I think it is anyway. Yeah, I don't understand why people wouldn't. I can understand, as I say, people join a guild and it ends up being a nightmare situation. Well, do you know what? So was my first guild experience, and so was my second, and so was my third. But actually, no, the third one was all right. The first two were shocking, though. But you just learn and try and do better when you selected a guild next time. That's the beauty of being a casual player as well. That you can, you don't even have to put a lot of thought into it. You can just try someone else. And if they're no good, we try someone else again. It's easy. It's easy. Simple as that. But anyway, there's the mailbox for another week. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share again. And remember, I need 20 people to be able to tell me where that mailbox is exactly before I unfilter names for next Azeroth review. So until next time, I'll see you later.